Alright, hi guys. So today we're just going to do a quick summary on operations with decimals. So we're going to cover addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and then converting decimals into fractions and percentages. So for addition, best way to do addition is how you would normally do any addition. The main thing is just making sure you line up the place values correctly. So for this first one, we've got 12.796 plus 0.893, and we want to make sure that we're lining them up so that the correct place values go underneath the same ones in the equivalent number. So I'm going to start by writing down the 12.796 first, okay, and then I'm going to add in making sure that the numbers line up. 3, 9, 8, because we can see the 8 and the 7 are in the tens place, the two 9s are in the hundredth spot, and the 3 and the 6 are in the thousandth spot, and then 0.0 there. And then we can just go through and how we would normally do a vertical addition. So 6 plus 3 gives us 9, 9 plus 9 gives us 18, so we write down the 8, carry the 1, 7 plus 8 gives us 15, plus 1 gives us 16, again carry the 1, 1 plus 2 gives us 3, and then the 1 is left over. Okay, perfect. That's the first addition. Second one, we're going to start, this is subtraction. Subtraction exactly the same way. I'm going to do it using a vertical column. So we start off with 10.8, and then again we want to make sure that these numbers line up. So I'm going to put the 3 underneath the 0 from the 10, and then the 4 under the 8, because they're both in the 10th spot, and then the 2 and the 7. And I just want to fill in the last two values on that 10.8 as two zeros, just to make sure we've got the same number of decimal places for both numbers. Okay, so now we're subtracting. So 0 minus 7, that gives us, that's not going to work, but what we can do is we can go to this next 0, and I think we can't borrow anything from that either because it's another 0 again. But then we can go to this 8 and we can borrow a number from the 8. So we can make that 7, which then that 10 that you take off that 7, that's going to carry through and make that next number 10. And then we can cancel that out, and that becomes a 9. And we can carry that 1 remainder through again. So now we're left with 10 minus 7, which is 3. 9 minus 2, which is 7. 7 minus 4, which gives us 3. Same problem here, we're going to need to borrow some numbers from for this 0 here, so we're going to make that 1 down to a 0, that becomes a 10, so 10 minus 3 gives us 7. Okay, so our answer is 7.373. Okay, multiplication, I always think the best way to work any kind of multiplication sum is by first converting the numbers into the equivalent whole numbers. So what you need to think about with these is what would you need to multiply these numbers by to make them a whole number. So for each of these, if we multiplied this by 10 and this by 10, that would move each of these this would move each of these decimal places 1 point, and then we'd be left with a whole number to work with. So we're going to do that. So 1.5 times 10, we move the decimal point 1 spot, and that becomes 15. Times by 0.4, we times that by 10, that moves the decimal point 1 spot again, so we end up with 4. Now 15 times 4, if you want to, you can do like your column multiplication. So 5 times 4 gives you 20. Okay, 4 times 1 gives you 4, plus 2 gives you, sorry, mind blank, 4 times 1 gives you 4, plus 2 gives you 6, so 60. Okay, if you want to do that in your head as well, it's completely fine, because it's not a very hard multiplication to do. Okay, so now we've got 60. Now the problem is because we move these decimal places 1 spot for each of these numbers, we now need to do the opposite of that, and move it back 2 spots to compensate for that original movement. So at the moment we've got 60, but we're going to move this decimal point back 1 spot. So that's the first 10 that we did, and then another spot, that's the second 10 that we did. Okay, so our actual answer is 0.60. Okay, and make sure you check on your calculator when you're doing this. You've got 1.5 times by 0.4. Okay, and you can see that gives you 0.6 as your answer. Okay, next one, we've got 0.362 times by 0.18. So now this one, in order to change this one into a whole number, we would need to multiply this by 1,000 because we're moving this decimal point 1, 2, 3 places. Okay, so we times it by 1,000 and we get 362. And then this one here is 0.18. We would need to times this by 100 to move that 2 decimal places, so we'd have that 1, 2. So altogether, we've moved the decimal point 5 places, and that becomes 18. Okay, now again, we can do our column multiplication. Okay, and I'm just going to quickly do this on my calculator, just to save a little bit of time, but when you guys are doing it in your exam, you should do all of your working. Okay, so 362 times by 18, I just don't want this video to go on for ages, which gives me 6,516. Okay, so 6,516. Now make sure when you're doing this in the exam that you do check your answer on your calculator, make sure you've done it right. Now, so at the moment, the decimal point is behind that last 6. But again, we moved it initially 5 places, so we do need to send it back 5 places now to compensate for that movement. So we're going to move it back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 places, so it's going to become there. And then this space where we have a value here, that's going to add in an extra 0, so we're going to have another 0 in there. Okay, so our number is 0.06516. Okay, that's our multiplication. Alright, moving on to division. Division's actually a little bit easier because when you're dividing, you don't need to, you do need to do the same step at the start where you convert the numbers into whole values, but then after that, you don't actually need to go back and change them back again. Okay, so when you think about this with this one, so 12.5, so we change that into a whole number. Okay, so that's going to, if we times that by 10, that's going to move that decimal point 1 spot, okay, which gives us 125. And then we're going to also times this 2 by 10 as well, so we keep the numbers in the same proportion. So if you've multiplied this one by 10, we're also going to multiply this one by 10. So we end up with 125 divided by 20. And then it's simply a matter of doing your division. Okay, and again, I'm going to do this one on my calculator just to save some time. 125 divided by 20. Okay, and I get 6.25. Okay, perfect, lovely. Next one again, we've got 18.6 divided by 0.3. So again, we're going to times both of these by 10 to make them into whole numbers. So now this one, we can change this to 100, we've moved that decimal point 1 spot, so it's become 186. And this second one, we're going to move that decimal point 1 space as well, so that's going to become 3. Okay, just the number 3. Perfect, so now we're going to do, for this one won't take too long, so we will actually do our full division. So we've got 186 divided by 3. Okay, so 3 goes into 1, well that doesn't work. 3 goes into 18 6 times, and 3 goes into 6 twice. So that goes in 62 times. And if we do our 18.6 divided by 0.3 just to check, okay, we can see we get 62. So that's perfect. So the only difference between the division and multiplication is you don't need to change the decimal places back at the end for division. Okay, and that's because as long as you keep the numbers in the same proportion or the same ratio or whatever you want to call it, then they should go into each other the same number of times. So that doesn't need to change. But when you're multiplying a number, by definition, you're kind of changing what that value is. So you do need to kind of convert it back to account for whether it's going to be bigger or smaller. Okay, now lastly, this will be nice and quick, converting to a fraction or a percentage. So if we're converting 0.786 to a fraction in simplest form, well, if we've got 0.786, okay, our last decimal point, that's in the 1,000th spot, okay, so our fraction would be 786 over 1,000. Now, in terms of simplifying it, I would suggest the best way to simplify it, and just to show that you've simplified, made it really clear that you've done a really good job of simplifying, is if both the numbers are even, just divide it by 2. If they're not even, might be a little bit trickier. Most of the time you should just be able to divide it by 2. So I know half of 700 is 350, and half of 86 is 43. Okay, so half of 786 is going to be 300, ooh, 93, okay, over 500. Okay, now the next thing I probably want to check is, are there any common factors between 393 and 500? And I think you can probably see there, probably the most obvious number that could go in is maybe 3. So if we divide that by 3, we get 131. If we divide 500 by 3, we do not get a whole number, so they do not go into each other. So if you're at this stage, then I would suggest in your exam, tuck your fractions in and see if there's any more solutions, and if you get the same fraction back. There isn't. If there is, try and work out what it was. Okay, there we go. All right, last one, converting, same number again, 0.786 into a percentage. Well, to convert any decimal to a percentage, we multiply by 100, and that means that we move the decimal point back 2 spots, and we end up with 78.6%. Excellent, there you go. Well, there's our quick decimal revision. Good luck.